Hello and welcome to another episode of The Page Burners. We are working our way through the Malazan books by Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont. We're currently working our way through Deadhouse Gates. Today's the final discussion. Well, not final. This is the final discussion in the order we are going. There will be one more spoiler discussion that we'll post the following week, where we'll talk about full series spoilers. I think we already recorded that episode, so we largely stuck to spoilers only from the Malazan Book of the Fallen. We didn't spoil anything from the ENC Esselmont books. But yes, we are working through the series in publication order, which means we won't get to an Esselmont book at least until after book 5. But coming up next is Memories of Ice. We'll probably start recording that in a week or so. Thinking chapters up to the first 3 chapters or so. I'll post a breakdown of the reading schedule on the forum. That's where we do all the planning for these discussions. If you'd like to chat with us about the books, please consider checking out the pagechewing forum. My name is Varsha. I should have said that way sooner than I did. But I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain. And with me, of course, we have the rest of the friends we discussed the podcast with. Carl, could you start us off with or continue introductions?
Yes,
Yeah, go
adjunct, sir, as you command.
ahead. I
I
guess also
am,
do the thing where we talk about the thing we're most excited to discuss. I
oh,
read this 2 weeks
of
ago, so I
course.
don't remember anymore. Just I guess the rebirth thing for Coltane with the
Yeah,
crows.
uh,
Um, yeah.
I am Carl D. Albert. I am, oh, sorry, one sec.
All right. While Carl figures that out, he's
Pardon
back.
me, there
Go
was
ahead.
an interruption. I am Carl D. Albert, author of Truth of Crowns and otherwise layabout. No, I am currently sick, so if I sound like I've been smoking 20 packs a day, that's why. It was a lot worse yesterday, so I'm glad I can actually like function right now. And the thing I'm most excited to talk about has got to be, oh man, what did I say before? I don't remember. I'm excited to talk about the interaction with Lucine. I think there's a lot going on there, and I've been really hard on the Kalam subplot, but the payoff I think is worth it.
Fun. And Shannon, you're muted if
I'm
you're talking.
Shannon.
Okay.
I am mostly just from here on pagechewing, and it also has been several weeks since I read this, so I am most excited to probably talk about the how about how Malik Rel got everybody killed at the end, bastard.
Yeah, that's a good topic. I can spend hours on that. Jared.
Reporting for duty, adjunct. I'm Jared, Fantasy Thinker on YouTube and on Speculative Speculation podcasts and other fine podcasts here on here with pagechewing.com. And I'm excited to talk about the end of this book specifically. Yeah, I don't know. I like the interchange between Calamity and the Empress. I thought that was I thought that gave us quite a bit of information about some of the past doings of the Empire that we hadn't been privy to before. And so I really enjoyed that.
Very nice. And Dan, who actually read all his chapters this week and is not just here to tell us that he didn't.
Yeah, I did read all these chapters. I don't know when I read them, but at some point I did. So yeah, I'm Dan, and I'm most interested probably in talking about, I don't know, how I recollect these books and how I thought that things happen in this book that don't actually happen and are actually in different books, and the timeline that I thought I had in my mind was very different than what it actually is.
Yes, that is a very interesting topic. I think that could apply generally to rereading, because I find myself trying to figure out what I remember versus what I read and why they're so different every time whenever I reread. So, yes, with all that said, I think where we left off last
Mhm.
week was not last week, a couple of weeks ago, when we last published an episode, was the crucifixion of Coltane. And from there, I think, well, a lot happens. You think that that's the climax and nothing worse can happen, and then worse things happen. Well, not, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if I'd call it worse, even though it was an entire army versus the slaughtering of Coltane, but there is something to that, to the
Yeah.
tragedy of each thing that makes them different. I feel like the Coltane one is bigger in magnitude. We can talk about that, but yes, the next thing happens is I guess the fallout from that.
I guess,
And
can I ask about Coltane's death and like all the crows that come to pick him up, right? To get his soul, right? But why why so many? Like, okay, I get that it's because, they need to carry his soul, and his soul, I guess, is stronger because he's getting close to ascendancy or something. I think it's mentioned before too. But why is he close to ascendancy? Do we know?
my impression was that it's just his deeds during this life brought
Okay.
him close to ascendancy. Like he's done such valorous things or
Hmm.
such noble things that he's getting close to ascendancy.
Okay.
The
Like being a good general, and
yeah.
I see. Okay.
And beyond that, I mean, it is then the reaction of his, like the people around him to his deeds that have elevated him. I mean, he's become this mythic figure that he's known throughout continents, plural. Not just in the seven cities, but all the way over in Darujistan, right? They sent the Trigol Trade Guild, so that there's just, like, you can imagine, millions of people who now know this guy as this absolute icon. And so through words and actions, and then through the belief of the people throughout the world, he has become elevated in some way. I mean, this is something that I think is never spelled out. Malazan's magic is less a system and more a story. And so you kind of have to, well, I think you can see a through line of sorts. It's not explicitly spelled out, and it's not, once you reach this level of believers, you cross over into ascendancy, right?
I see.
It's not a Sanderson level, hard magic system in that
So
regard.
it is kind of like
Sure.
it's sort of like a feedback loop in a sense, but the more you do things, the more people become aware of it. You're famous, and the more. So like, if he did the same things, but nobody was aware of him, I guess he probably wouldn't.
Yes, probably would. If it wasn't witnessed, that's a key term throughout this series, and Coltane was it was interesting because I think it has a lot to do with what Kyle said with the belief, because there's a a cult of hero worship that follows him and comes around him, and even the gods rely a lot on belief and belief in them, and so, and their power seems to be related in some manner to that, so that the more that people believed in Coltane, the more he got closer and closer to being, that level of ascendant that could eventually happen.
Makes sense.
Interesting. I kind of I think what you guys said makes absolute sense, that if he didn't have that many believers, or like, so to speak, or followers, or if he didn't have such renown, that he may not have ascended. But I kind of like the idea that it was just what he did that got him there. which I think is not necessarily true. And this is a theme that Erikson comes back to explore in later books for sure. But just doing it without being known for it would give you the same level of greatness, or does it? Is it great in and of itself, or is it only great because people know of it? Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's somewhat less palatable to me that the ascendancy is because of everybody knowing what he did.
It's
But
not
I
just
think that's
knowing
true.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
It's
being aware, or like
yeah.
appreciating. Yeah.
It's more that what they believe that what he did, they look at on it as something to worship, something
Mm.
to, you know, it's more than just knowing about it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think his actions are core to it. That he did it, and it was so extraordinary that in a way he sort of rewrote reality and has now elevated himself. I mean, it is ultimately through his actions. I'm not sure if we ever see an instance of someone ascending by doing something great and no one hears about it. Because I do feel like, I mean, maybe we'll see, right? Maybe something will come up and we'll be like, oh, look, you can do it that way. But Coltane's ascendancy is definitely empowered by his legend and how it has spread across the world.
The story that grows around it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that makes perfect sense. I just don't like it.
Well, I think it's just the same reason why some of the bridge burners are also on that same path, because like we got a little taste of it with Stormy and Gessler in this book, and
Yeah.
it's the same reasons, because of that myth surrounding them, that story growing around them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I was thinking, like, you know, what he did. I'm sure there's other generals and other commanders that did similar things, but are not as, you know, it was not in a situation in which it was so mythologized or whatever, so idealized, I guess. I don't know. That was my impression, but I wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's hard. It's hard not to talk about future books. It's really hard.
We'll get there in about 4 years. We will, and you can speak to your heart's content. Yeah, I think Gessler and Stormy, they were minted by their ascendancy through their what's what I'm looking for? Travels. That's such a lame word. But travels through the Warren that they went through, right? Like being burnished by whatever the flames were. But yeah, I didn't think of the mythology aspect of it. I guess they are also formerly well-known soldiers, right, who refused to get promoted. So yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it like that. I'm like, oh, you do the hard work and you get promoted. That's it. No, people need to know. You need visibility.
We'll see, I guess.
Yeah. I think that there's layers to it, right? Like I without the actions, it never would have happened. And Stormy and Gessler are an interesting case, right? Because we are invited to question how much of their growing power is related to the legend that we learn has been created around them, and how much is related just to the happenstance of their getting exposed to immense magical energies, and like, would they have survived Talon without already having begun the process of ascension? You know, I mean, this isn't a situation or a series where these things are kind of very clearly delineated. There's a lot of esoterica around the magic system, and so I think we just, in some ways, have to interpret it as we will and move forward. And yeah, I guess that's one thing I know we mentioned this in the spoiler chat that we have yet to upload, but the Warren that Stormy and Gessler were exposed to, you can safely identify in this book as Talon. which is the Warren of Fire, the Warren of the Talani Mass.
Safely identify. I like that term because of the Talan dragon, among other things. And I guess the fire, of course, the fire. Yeah. I guess Bowden, if he had stayed longer, would he have ascended, or did he need to be as well known? Like, would he have been an outlier, or would he have ascended, sort of gotten close to ascension with the others? Anyway, interesting questions. And I think this is one of those choose your own adventure theorizing things we can do. But moving on,
Mhm.
I guess, is this where they take the army out, and what's his face is complaining to the other what's his face, a Pomqual, that Coltane didn't do good by the refugees, Netpara.
Yeah.
And Duiker gets really angry at the guy. But anyway, they listen to Malikrel and take the whole army out to
It
its
just
doom, as we find out.
it's just so crazy to me that they do exactly the perfectly worst possible thing at every step, and the most like evil and stupid thing at every. It's like they're the perfect villain, sort of. You know what I mean? It's just they're always doing the opposite of what the good people do say they should do, right? Just so easy to hate them.
Formqual sucks. And
Yeah.
Malik Rel, yeah, I mean, he's been setting all this up, we learn, has been playing the strings of everyone from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You certainly hope the Whirlwind believers do not trust him,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Okay, I had a sort of question about this, and I'm sure that maybe there's an explanation, but throughout the book, we're told about how dangerous the Malazan soldiers are because they think for themselves, right? And in this case, all of the soldiers in Erin, or enough of them that could make a difference, would have liked to go help Coltane, but they don't do anything. Do you think they believe that Pomqual has a bigger plan, or I'm wondering what's going on there. Why were they okay to let them be slaughtered in that manner?
Well, I think it's because most of the soldiers there were Aaron soldiers. We know that he locked up the Red Blades, the most Malazan pro soldiers that he had. So I think that's because these weren't really Malazan soldiers. These were all Aaron soldiers, and you're right. Like the problem is they follow Pomqual, even though it makes no sense and it's to their detriment, and then they all get killed because of it.
I do feel like they're described as like, if they're described like, oh, everyone wants to help, and they're fighting at the, I don't remember what's the saying, but like they really want to go out and help. And even I don't know if even opening the doors to the refugees, was that even against the commander or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think they were asked to close the doors, but then they had to pretty much hammer it down.
Yeah, I don't know. So I feel like they all wanted to go and help, it seems.
Yeah,
Right, and we are told that the Malazan soldiers are different in that if they want to do something and they think that that is the right thing to do, they might actually do it, right? Like, think for themselves is more than just, oh, I wish things had gone differently. It's actually going and doing it.
I think that's a bit of mythologizing around them. I mean, I think there is some truth to the idea that they are more independent thinkers than your traditional soldier, but they're still soldiers, and there's still a chain of command, and they have to follow that chain of command, or else there are consequences. Literally, just military functions do not work if you do not keep to the chain of command. That's why mutinies are such a big issue on a ship or wherever, is because once you've done it once, you've opened the door. It can happen again and again and again. It's the same thing with revolutions. If you coup a king once, what's to stop the next king from being couped, right? You establish a precedent, and that just leads to chaos. So I think they wanted to do it, and in their small ways they kind of push back, but they ultimately are still soldiers following orders. I mean, think about in Gardens of the Moon how the bridge burners, who we've led to believe are relatively heroic characters go in and were totally cool with doing a terrorist attack in Darujistan. Like, sometimes they just follow orders, and maybe they feel bad about it. Maybe they think, I don't know, this is the best thing, but they just do it because that's what they do. They're soldiers. And I do feel that independent thinking is almost more driven by their... I imagine it's actually like less about the moral compass driving them to go against orders and more about how can we facilitate these orders in ways the commander is not intending. So I think of like the sappers and the engineers throughout their, the campaign in this book being really secretive and not telling everyone what they're doing, except maybe Coltane, and, going and doing all these great imaginative traps for, the rebels. And so that, to my mind, is more of a kind of what it really means on a practical day-to-day in that way. But I still feel like they are like you'd have to be pushed really far to completely revolt. Again, think about how it literally took Dujik, one arm being outlawed, for the bridge burners to fully turn against the scene, even though they all hated her guts and thought, she'd killed the emperor they worshipped, and, any number of things, right? Even though she'd done all these things that they thought were like morally repugnant. And again, it turns out in the end that that's all part of a larger plan. We learn, right, that Lasine intentionally is outlawing an army because the Malazan forces, like the Darujistani people, the Darus, are not going to agree to team up with their would-be conquerors. But if this is an outlawed force, they can team up, right, and to face the greater threat of the Panian Seer and his hordes.
Yeah.
And I want to point out, when I said they were following protocol, I didn't mean to chase after Corporal Adam. I think they wanted to do that. I think they wanted revenge for Coltane. I'm talking about specifically the order to put down their weapons and to surrender. That was the thing I can't understand why they would do unless they were just following orders, because it goes against their very perseverance. Like, to just lay down your weapons and surrender yourself to an enemy like that. And since we're talking about this, though, I do want to... The one great thing that came out of all this was at least Nethpara got his throat kicked in and died. That made me so happy. And that was really like there was a lesson there that, like, you shouldn't shit talk somebody and tell them you're arresting them and you're going to kill them before you actually have them arrested and in your control, because he was saying all this stuff to Duiker that, like, oh, you're going to die, and Duiker's sitting there on a horse in front of him. And yeah, then Duiker's like, okay, well, I might as well kill you, because what do I got to lose?
I mean, he should have killed him like 2 battles ago, to be honest. Like, what was it? When they crossed over refugees,
when they crossed the river,
disobeying orders. I think if he killed him at that point, nobody would have said anything, because it was in the middle of battle too. I don't know if we would even have noticed, but yeah.
Yeah. This is an insight that I think I borrowed from P.L. Stewart, from a conversation he had on, I think it was AP's channel. But in the beginning, the killing of the noble woman is kind of horrifying with how Bowden kills her. But we're sort of cheering pretty much when Nethpara is killed. I guess the flip there is interesting. And maybe I don't know. I don't know how I feel about how either of them got killed, but I guess it gives us some insight into why the nobility is hated so much.
It's not just like kill the nobles because they're nobles and they're all haughty dickheads. It's like this person is actively rebelling and doing everything they can to make your lives as hard as possible when the stakes are as high as they can possibly be. And that, in my mind, is what potentially justifies an execution. And I also think if you do it in kind of a way of due process of like getting approval, or, not so much due process and do it in the middle of a battle and hope that no one calls you out on it later. I mean, it's risky, right? This is a messy situation. I don't know that there's a very clear right or wrong move here, because like just pragmatically, there are a lot of different ways that killing him could go wrong and could lead to, you know, the Malazans being treated, you know, even worse than they were. Although ultimately, obviously, they're treated as badly as they possibly could be. But I mean, before that point, when they first come inside the walls of Aaron, and there's just, it's tough. I remember thinking it was sort of a moral victory for Duiker to hold back in the battle when I was reading through this time, because I didn't remember what happened to Nethpara, and then to see how that plays out, it ends up seeming like a mistake that he didn't kill him sooner, actually, because this guy sabotaged them after they got back and sabotaged Coltane and has been spreading lies. And at that point, you're like, yeah, you are evil.
Yeah.
You have crossed the line. You are just full of horrid feelings and motivations, and the world is better off without that person. But it's tough, right? It's tough to make that call, particularly when they're all fleeing for their lives.
I feel he already made, like, one time he disobeyed the order and crossed and got a bunch of people killed. Then he tried, like, oh, I should leave ahead, take the horses and run to the city. And then what else he did? He, like, at every possible step, he was doing the worst possible thing. Like, he proved it already, like, a long time ago, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think at that very first time, it should have just been, like, harsh justice.
Yeah.
Like, anyone else, if they weren't nobles, would have been executed. And so, you know, they should have been executed.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, like, this specific book, at least of all the Malazan books that I've read, is very, how to say, like, the characters are a bit like a caricature of themselves and of the role they're playing. Like, it's not super, like, some of the things we're doing, like, oh, the soldiers on the walls, they want to go out, want to help. Like, everything is very well set up to give you that nice emotional feeling of, you know, fuck the bad guys, or like, oh, this is very tragic and hence the tragedy. Like, the feeling of a book is like, it feels right, but if you think about it too hard, it's not like, in my opinion, the characters are not super realistic or very deep. Like, the bad characters are bad, and that's what they do, and they do the worst thing every time, and the good characters pretty much always just do the right thing every time, sort of. You know what I mean?
I would disagree with that. I would agree that, like, some of them aren't particularly deep. Like, a lot of the bad guys, like Pormqual or Nethpara, aren't particularly deep. But I think that sometimes there are people who are genuinely atrocious and just are, like, continually making bad decisions. And you can see this throughout history. And you can see it in the world. And I think that sometimes people just suck. And it is a useful storytelling tool if you have someone that you can just hate, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I struggle against is, one, that's not realistic, because I think it is. Like, you know, to talk about another series, like, Joffrey Baratheons exist. You know, there are people who are just, like, deranged psychopaths.
Yeah.
And if they get in power and they have, like, an absurd amount of power, they do terrible things. And often they fail upwards, you know, until someone kills them. And then, but the thing I really push up against is that the heroes are just all good. You know, I think that they do some really rough things over the course and make some decisions, like whether or not to kill Nethpara, that I think are debatable, right? Like, I'm not sure that that's the right call when he did it versus when he didn't do it earlier or anything like that, you know? I think that there's a little more room for nuance there. And I do feel like the heroes in particular are more complex. But I would agree with you that in general, the bad guys in this book are two-dimensional.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is. I'm not saying it's bad, because it's like, it's very satisfying to read, and it's very, like, the set pieces are very heroic, and it's very tragic when the bad things happen at the end. You know, it gives you at least to me, it gives me the emotional satisfaction reading this book, but it gives me less of a like thinking about it and sort of thinking about the characters and how they evolve and stuff like that compared to some of the other books in this series, as far as I can remember, or what
Yeah, that's
happens.
fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I hear you about that.
It makes you wonder how deep couldn't you go with all these characters? How deep can you go with rounding out even every single crappy noble that they run into? That's like you guys are saying. There's been tons of historical cases of crappy nobles who do really bad things. The Russian nobles did it for thousands of years before the communists rose up and overthrew them, and and you don't really hear about their good sides, in any of the history books. And the one thing you got to remember about what Erikson is doing with this story and a lot of the other books is it has a kind of historical perspective when you have Duiker as one of your main chroniclers of what's going on here, and that's kind of the viewpoint you got to take towards it, is that it's kind of a record, and it's going to be a one-sided record depending upon which side is doing the chronicling. And so that kind of makes sense in that aspect of it.
that's
True.
a good point. I think it does. Yeah, you're right. It does make me feel a lot like that, like early, like first half of 1900s historiography, in which like the historians try to put like a moral narrative or a sort of narrative into the history of things, compared to like the more modern one, in which you're like, okay, why are they more pragmatic and less like judging why things from a moral standpoint, like, oh, these people were barbaric tribe, and that's why we're strong if they attacked the civilized people, and then they became civilized, and then they became weak, and that sort of narrative that doesn't exist in the current history, but it would exist in past history. Yeah, but it does feel like that.
I think, yeah, this book has a particular tone, that to me feels quintessentially Malazan, but also is a little unique. I mean, every book in the series is kind of its own unique beast in that way. But I think to get to that sort of complex perspective you're talking about, I mean, I think we've already seen that even more so in Gardens of the Moon, where pretty much all the characters existed on some form of gray morality, right? And even the villains had their much more humanizing. Like I think of like Adjunct Lorne, who you absolutely can sympathize with, and it's just she unfortunately changes. Like she fails to change. She cannot make that last jump, and she dies for it. It's a morality tale of another sort, right? She's this tragic figure, and I think eagle-eyed readers will notice that we have a new adjunct who's been kept afar from us, right? And who we have every reason to think kind of sucks. Adjunct Tavor, she's coming. She's gonna, seek out blood and fire for what has been done to the Malazans, and we'll have to see, right? Is she Lorne come again, or is there something else, something more to her? What is the depth of her character?
Yes.
Yes. I'm so curious about how many first-time readers we have who actually listen to this podcast. Like I that's one of the things that I'm like, I don't know what our audience is, like who are we dealing with here? So if you're a first-time listener, first-time reader, please comment on the forum or on one of the YouTube videos where these are posted. It is posted like all over the place. Let us know. I really want to hear from people who like this is their first time through. If you just happen to like stumble across and are listening with us, because I would love to know how much the way we're speaking about it affects someone's read through on their first time through, and if it feels like we're spoiling things or anything like that.
Is there anyone even listening? I don't know. Varsha, what's the stats?
So Jared listens to every episode that comes out. I know Josh does. Is it? There's a few others who I get comments from regularly, and I think Steve gets some. We have like 5 listeners, which also did not. Thank you so much for listening. That sounds like a small number, but I'm really grateful that anybody at all is listening.
My understanding too is that the bulk of our listeners come from the actual like page chewing podcast and listen to it on there, like on a podcast platform, as opposed to YouTube. I think YouTube, like with a lot of podcasts, is not kind of the prime medium through which people partake. Which
And
also
the
makes it
podcast
harder
itself
to hear
has-
from them, right?
Was that?
It also makes it harder for us to hear from them, right? Like
That's
the
true.
listeners who are just like downloading the episodes when Steve uploads them, like they don't have a comment section, right? They would have to come to the forum to post anything.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging those people to reach out to us. I would really love to hear from you.
Yes, please.
Especially because we will be interviewing Steven Erikson sooner rather than later. We're working on getting a new date set up. I guess that's something we didn't say is we had to postpone. He had technical issues. His laptop melted down. But we will get an interview with him unless he just hates us, in which case we will weep, and we will go unwitnessed. But that we will cross that hill when we get there.
Like that. If that happens, I'll rename our podcast to The Unwitnessed.
That actually would be perfect and hysterical. If he turns on us, he hates us. We are the unwitnessed Malazan read through.
No.
Oh no.
That is a cool podcast.
That actually, that's like a really cool. Well, what's good too is like no one sees our faces. Like I can see your faces right now, except for Shannon's who lives in the darkness we're in. But we are unwitnessed. We're not unheard, but we are unwitnessed.
For some definition of witnessed, yes.
Yeah. It could be nice though. We can have like a sort of narrative that Steven Erikson hates us, and then we can sort of, build upon that, have some controversy, right?
Do some social drama.
Yes.
Yeah.
We already wanted to be the podcast that makes people stop having those what's the phrase? Parasocial relationships. We want to destroy that in people.
Yep.
So the next step is to be the controversial Steven Erikson hates us podcast. Like we read books and make authors hate us when we talk about them. We even like the books, but the authors hate us anyway. That's just how terrible.
The only group of fans that Steven Erikson doesn't want to talk to.
Yeah, I should do that.
I forget where we were in the order of chapters we were reading off of. So should we just... I guess we were logically on track to talk about Malik Rel. So Shannon, do you want to kick us off with that? You're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, there you go. So,
he's your favorite
I think
character?
Malik Rel is my favorite character because he's just such an asshole. He's two-faced, he's manipulative. If you've seen the fan art, he looks kind of like a frog or a toad. Yeah, he's great. He's amazing. No, I just wanted to... I mean, I think we really hit on what I wanted to talk about, which was the soldiers kind of putting down their arms and listening to Pormqual, who was being manipulated by Malik Rel. Which I just found baffling, but it's what they did. Yeah, Malik Rel played him. I mean, he's with the... Well, he appears to be with the Resistance. Maybe in future books we'll see. But yeah, just that the death of Duiker, the death of the army, Pormqual, all of that was shocking.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is his deal? Like, we were told several times through the book that he is Gistal, which is not supposedly doesn't have anything to do with Seven Cities. So everybody kind of like just chilled, and it's like, yeah, this guy's cool. I think as readers, we decided not to focus too much on him. Duyker was certain that, he's got a vendetta against Coltane because of that bit of insult during the first war council. And whatever he did, it seems much larger than just petty revenge for some ill treatment. He there's two possibilities here, right? He went and made Coltrane made him so angry during that interaction. He went and talked to Shaik's army commanders behind their back, and then like planned this whole big what do you call it? Betrayal. Which doesn't make much sense because he didn't know just how far Coltrane would get. All the odds were stacked against him. Um, so and Pomqual never sent a backup, presumably because he was listening to Malikrel. So, what do you think his game is? What does he want?
Maybe just corrupt money, or maybe that's the only thing I could think of. Or he wanted power or something. Well, here he had
Yeah.
power.
What does he get out of this? Like, he's not going. Shaik is still the leader of the revolution, and as far as we know, this is the end of his involvement here. We don't know what happens next. Right now.
Maybe he thought the Malazan would lose, so better be on the winning side.
Better be on. Interesting.
Maybe.
But then he made them lose.
Well, but if you're thinking they're gonna lose anyways at the end, might as well, make it even easier and be on the winning side, I guess, if he thought that. I don't know if that's what he thinks, but
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I mean, I have read later books, so I definitely have a much better idea. What I can say is I'm going to read the epigraph to chapter 4. The priest of elder male dreams rising seas. This is a poem titled Dusk by someone named Sethand. Okay, the priest of elder male dreams rising seas. Another name for the priest of elder male is a G-stall. We hear him referred to that over and over again. So let's just clarify some things. A G-stall priest, meaning he is a priest of male, the elder god of the seas. Rising seas. As a visual, obviously, you might think good for the seas, rising, ascending. That's maybe a more potent word than I necessarily meant to use, but who knows, right? So the thing I think we can safely say is this is a man who plays long games, who you should not trust, who is easily offended, and when he's offended, will not forget, and who is planning in pursuit of his own power. The question I think at this point is there more to his pursuit? Is it just power? Is he doing this for his god? What is motivating him? That is unclear at this point, but I do think it's fair to say that he is pursuing power and is playing everyone. I mean, certainly, like, we haven't seen him openly betray the apocalypse, but like, if I was them, I would not trust this guy because he just betrayed everyone he had worked with up until that point, including the man who elevated him to a position of power, Pormqual. So, sketchy dude.
Sketchy dude. I think, horrible as that scene was, there was a moment of, I don't want to say warmth, what's the word I'm looking for? That relief, maybe? I don't know. When, I forget, the commander of the other army, Kamistrillo, he says, I'm going to give all the other soldiers a warrior's death, but this guy, Pormqual, well, I think he just kills him or beheads him or something, like right there. It's like you're gonna die a dog's death. Everybody else, I will give honorable, noble deaths.
But I would rather take Pornqual's death than the other
100%.
people's death. So
Yes.
I agree.
It's terrible.
But in his mind, he was giving him a less honorable death, which
Yeah.
was interesting to me. That he was respected by no one.
Yeah, Pormqual's a little shit. He deserves nothing. He's a coward, a sycophant. You know, he's the reason Coltane died. He sucks. He got what was coming to him. The poor soldiers did not deserve their fate.
no, they got like the Spartacus rebellion.
Yeah.
Crucified all the way.
What's this?
Oh, yeah. You know Spartacus, right? Oh, the guy, he led a slave revolution against the Romans.
Mm.
And he was very successful for like 3 or 4 years, and then he got defeated, and the whole army got crucified along the road to Rome, the same way as all the soldiers got crucified.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. It's one of those really epic stories that gets remade into Hollywood shows and movies all the time because it is so tragic. Because ultimately, they lose.
Mm.
Yeah. Even though they won several battles against all odds, right?
Yes.
But, yeah.
It's like Dune if Paul lost in the end and the Fremen were wiped out.
Okay. Interesting. I have to look that up. Okay. Yeah.
Just watch the movie. I'm sure there's a movie.
There is. It's old.
Yeah, it's an older movie, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the description of the crucifixion though, and like how he has to wait and see everyone else, and the actual thing is really gruesome.
Okay.
No, I mean like in this book.
Yeah,
I've said.
No, it is.
It's like, okay, I have to look that up. But do I really
It's
want
gruesome no matter where it happens.
Well, it's because we're very aware of crucifixion because of Christianity. You see that everywhere, sort of, depending on where you live. But you don't often stop and think about exactly what happened, right, and how bad it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the guy got crucified, and he did it, and this whole thing. But it's like
Yes.
it's not great.
I agree. That
but it was
sounds
a
awful.
common pastime in Rome.
That's a way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember this from the what is it called? The Robert Harris trilogy, the Cicero trilogy. I forget what the first book is called, but yes, there were sequences where the road to Rome, people were crucified, and I remember thinking that was horrible. Sorry, Dan, you were about to say something.
Sidebar: is that trilogy good?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't reread it, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I remembered stuff from reading Julius Caesar, the play, for school for 2 years. I reread that play like 4 times. That was fun to, because it was for my board exams. It was fun to revisit all those characters from a different perspective. So, yeah, it's
I don't know
good.
if it's
yes.
mentioned
Yeah.
in this book, but
Mhm.
yeah, some of one of the things they did is like they put a pedestal under your feet so that you wouldn't put completely all your weight there, and you would have to be forced to be there for way longer, and you don't die.
I think they do that.
Maybe
because
they
with Duiker, they said something about the pedestal. Maybe they had him there for a long time and then they took it out, but there was something about where he was standing, if I remember correctly.
Let's pause on that, on Duiker, because I think he's worth mentioning. This guy who seemed like he was going to be a survivor to tell their story, and then he gets crucified and seemingly dies. We see his body. But then later, when some fellows come by, I'm blanking on who it is.
Stormy, Gessler, and Truth.
It is Stormy, Gessler, and Truth.
Yep.
They come by, and he is not there, although all the other bodies are crucified. So the question certainly is, what happened to Duiker? And that is an open mystery.
Yeah. Well, Stormy and Gessler saw something, and then Baruch's Bokarala servants took the bottle that Duiker had. And
Yep.
I don't remember where where that happens in here exactly.
Was that from the bottle from the Trade Guild? Was that given to Coltane, and then Coltane gave it to Duiker?
Yes. And that is what had his spirit in it. The bottle.
Like the one on the necklace?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so
that's something to keep your eye out for.
The
that is something that always shocks me, is resolving Duiker's fate is not in this novel. It's left relatively ambiguous. Eagle-eyed readers can kind of pick together what happened, but it is not made clear in this book.
I had to read it online. I didn't catch
Well, I guess because we don't know exactly.
I read it online too. Yeah, I fully read it online, which is crazy because if you just read the next book, you find out.
Yeah.
But it is there. You will, if you have the patience, you will find out exactly what happened. Yes. Also on this topic, while we were talking about the turncoat and the betrayal and all of that, Haboric, when they meet Comisrello and Malik Rel, Haboric is hearing this voice, this god laughing, and he thinks it is his god. He thinks it's Finner. I think it's pretty fair to say it's not Finner. Finner doesn't have a lot of reasons to be laughing right now.
Yeah.
And I think in a spoiler talk, we actually debated this a little bit. But I want to bring it up again here for people who are not going to listen to the full series spoiler talk, which is what god is laughing? I mean, or is he just imagining it? In a series like Malazan, I think it's fair to say he's probably not just imagining it, right? Like, so it's not Finner. Well, what's the other thing that he's connected to right now?
The jade thing.
Yeah.
The jades? So what would be going on with that jade thing? What voice would he hear laughing from that jade thing?
Doesn't he also have a bit of a Tataril in... Wait, I heard Erikson say it the other day in an interview. Never mind, I'm going to say it how I say it. Tataril stuff in his hand. No?
Yes. I think so.
He does, yeah.
Is that connected to a god too?
That is major spoilers.
To a god. Oh, I'm just trying to mix up the pot here to add confusion. I wasn't aware I was spoiling things.
I just think this is something that readers, first-time readers or rereaders who don't remember anything, should be thinking about. Who was the god laughing? And this is something that we can get the answer to. And I also think
now I should be able to know
ultimately we can know the answer. It also, right, is it the same god that earlier, either in that same chapter or in the previous chapter, Duiker heard laughing? Duiker heard a god laughing. And he thinks it's Hood. He thinks it's Hood laughing at them. And he seems to see, before he dies, by the way, some figure, a Jagged, but like a really withered, like a spirit of a Jagged that looks kind of gross. What's going on there?
Is that the father of who was protecting the gravesite?
That is who he thinks it is. He thinks it is the spirit that was speaking to List. What I would say, my point of view is, generally speaking, when there's a mysterious encounter, it is never the person that the character thinks it is. It is someone else. They are almost always, in my experience, mistaken. You think about it just from a dramatic level, that that adds to the like, ooh, fun reveal, but also, it's playing with the unreliable narrator, right? That the characters don't know all things. They're guessing at what they're witnessing, what they're experiencing. And so oftentimes it's not literally what they think is happening. As evidenced by the story with Tayshrin, we'll get to all this in a bit. But, Lysine and all what she says happened. It sounds very different from what we were led to believe happened in Gardens of the Moon. Everyone here has like read these books. So if it's Steve here, this would be more worthwhile to ask him what he thinks is going on there. But for any listener who this is the first time, be thinking about that. What is that jacket that Duerker saw right before he died? And who did he hear laughing? He thought it was Hood. Do we think it was Hood? And then is it the same god that Haboric heard laughing? Is it just Hood? Are they both just hearing Hood laughing? Haboric isn't dying. Is it male? Because we know, the Gistal, Malacrel serves male. Or is it someone else entirely? Something to think about.
Couldn't tell you.
That's funny. Yes, lots to think about. Some stuff that I missed, but realized based on the questions that Carl asked. So this is fun.
Last little bit about these scenes is I find it very potent that when faced with Aaron and the end of her journey, Felison decides, instead of confronting the Malazans and taking the city, to turn around and go back to Raraku, essentially into the womb of the whirlwind. She's fleeing. She's afraid, right? She does not yet have the courage to face her sister.
Interesting.
Is
I
that
kind of
why? Okay,
believed her when she's like, it felt like a power move to me, and I kind of believed her. Sorry, Dan, what were you saying?
No, I was asking if that's the reason why. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, her army travels via Warren to learn that Dom. She learned that Dom did not take Aaron,
Yeah.
and that's when she returned to Raraku.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I thought, doesn't she say something to the effect that she'll choose the ground where they'll fight,
Yes,
and that's
right.
why she
Yes.
returned?
She did, yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize she was sort of turning tail. I thought she's just like, I'm gonna go back where I am powerful.
No, that's what
And
she
we'll
says.
wait. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is her pitch. I think that's bullshit. I think she's scared.
That's fair.
Nice. That's
I think she is scared
that could
of
be true. Yeah.
having to actually unleash what is around her. And she's scared of losing. She's just a child who's been clothed in a god.
Wouldn't Shaik be able to take control though when she wants to? Because didn't she take control at some point previously? It felt maybe.
I don't know that she can fully possess her.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about this before, but I think a lot of Felison acting differently is her intentionally putting on a role. In the same way that she acted differently after entering the mines than she did in the prologue.
Okay.
I
But
mean,
there
that's just
must
my
be
reading
some
on it.
part of a god there, right? That
Yeah,
must be
absolutely.
for sure.
It can influence her, absolutely.
Okay.
But like if it was the raw spirit of the whirlwind, I have to imagine they would just charge into it. It's uncontrolled, it's frenzied. That's its very nature. Whirlwinds don't retreat. They don't turn around. That was Felison deciding to turn around.
Yeah. Yeah, just wondering how much control she has and how much
That's
she
a good
doesn't,
question.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Also
Much like with
something to ponder.
sorry. Upsalar formerly sorry, right? Like the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. But that
A
one
similar
felt like
question comes up.
the god had like the control. When he was in there, he could do whatever he wanted, right?
Yeah,
For
she
sure.
she had no awareness even of
Yeah.
what was going on. Does it feel like Felicin and Upsilar's journey are a bit sort of reversed? Upsilar is like finding herself after being abused. I think that's the right word for it. And Felicin was abused first and now is finding herself through a bit of possession, which
Yeah.
it's interesting, the reversal in their journeys.
No, I think you're right. I think they're definitely parallel figures in this book, very intentionally. You know, I mean, they're both chosen ones. They're both young girls. There's a lot going on there that I think we've talked about it a little bit in previous episodes, but I think that you could
Yeah.
write a whole essay on the connections between those two characters and how they are similar and how they are different and what that means, what Erikson is saying through them. Certainly, my reading on it, just overall, is that Apsalar is the more heroic, the more successfully realized character versus Felicin, who is more tragic and who breaks, you know, and succumbs to her faults.
Or do we think that Felicin breaks because we know what she's thinking and we don't know just how broken Upsilar is because we haven't yet had a perspective?
That's
Good
fair.
point.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess in my mind, it's more that Apsalar finds some level of real success and seems to grow in some ways and actually like eke out a kind of coherent identity, while Felicin's identity is messier than it's ever been. You know, the very fact that it's unclear how much or how little she's possessed, I think speaks to that. While Apsalar in this book, at least what we're told in this book, and maybe it's not true, is that she is on the other side and those other voices are a part of her, but they do not define her, they do not control her. She is who she is.
Mhm.
It's interesting. She is who she is, probably as the person. I don't know how to explain this, but you know how she has this sort of lethal air about her. The Fisher girl would not have grown into that on her own. So she is very much influenced by her possession. Who she
Yeah.
is now is influenced by her possession, which means that and because of that, like, that has to change her as a person too, like her thought process and like how she feels about the world and how she feels about maybe killing now, right? Like the Fisher girl would probably have been very squeamish about killing. So she has been, her identity, I think, has been changed on a fundamental level. And for me, where she is at right now, with sort of grappling with the memories of Cotillion, is very similar to where Felicin is with, because she is aware of her possession. Like, I wouldn't even call it a possession, it's more of a symbiotic relationship she has with this god. And the god's memories that she has will probably influence her and like give her the sense of power and maybe help her grow and change as a person there. So I think these two are very interesting explorations of how maybe memories define identity. But for me right now, the way
You
I'm
say
looking at it, it's
memories defining identity. Uh-oh. Is this time for Akarium?
oh yes. Let's go. But let me finish that sentence I was saying. But I think I think
Sorry.
I think
My bad.
the no no that was a perfect cutting. But, what was I saying? Damn it.
Oh no.
The yes. So I think they are sort of at almost exactly the same place right now, even though they got here through like in opposite directions. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But I think there's a lot we can talk about with those characters, and we'll have the opportunity to. So let's go to Icarium. Icarium. I say his name 4 different ways every episode.
They're all correct.
So yeah, I didn't think of that. Memories defining identity, and why didn't I? Or it wasn't a well defined thought, but that is great. With Icarium and loss of identity because of loss of memories. Interesting.
I loved Mappo before these scenes, but at the end of these scenes, he always skyrockets to the top of my favorite characters. He saves the dogs. He has these potions that he could use to help himself or to help Icarium, but instead he gives them up to save dogs that would die otherwise. Just what a heroic, selfless act. Absolute goat level. Like he is the man. Mappo Trail, Mappo Runt.
Yes.
What a guy.
What a guy. What a player.
What a player.
He's a liar.
The best liar I've ever known.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yes, I love Mappo. And Icarium's basically unconscious at this point in the story, right? Okay.
For most of
Yes.
it, yeah.
And where are they headed? He takes a ride with Stormy, etc. But he drops off, right? After healing the dogs. He's like, I'm gonna go here with my friend. Can you drop me at the stop, please? No?
Yeah, where
Or
are
does
they
he
go-
go
is-
on with them? I don't remember.
Is it the Jag Odon?
Well,
Where-
he says there west of here lies the Jagodon.
Yeah.
Mm.
Icarium's like, yes, I feel very close this time.
Mm.
And Mappo's just like, yeah, okay, pal, all right.
The cycle continues, right? It's so tragic.
Yes.
They're like they're doing this all over again. They're back where they started in
So-
page 1.
Did Mappo realize that the sort of his memories of his village being killed are fake? I'm trying to remember. Did
It's
he?
not his memories that are fake. It's that Icarium was not the one who killed
Yeah.
the villagers. What he had been told, he walked into a village that was massacred.
Oh, that's
and he
what
was
happened. Okay.
told Icarium did it. And he found out that was not the case. It was the nameless ones.
Okay. So did Icarium ever kill anyone in like that way? I guess we don't know. We only know that example.
I think we do know that he did. Didn't okay, I don't remember how much we find out. Dan, what do you remember about Gothos and his relationship to other people in the book?
We
Is
find
this
that
an
out.
exam or something?
No, because I don't want to say there is something I know about him. I don't remember whether we find out about it in this book.
No, we
So it's
do.
like playing Hanabi. You tell me
Yeah.
what you know, and then I'll give you more information.
We find out Gothos is the father.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, that
I
one.
couldn't
Yeah.
remember
Ding,
if that
ding,
was
ding,
this
ding,
book.
Yeah, Gothos, who we will see writing a bunch of epigraphs. He's locked in the Deadhouse. That's where we meet him.
Yeah.
We meet him when Fiddler and co go through the Deadhouse, and there's Gothos, and he's very polite, and he like makes them tea, and he tells them that like his son was cursed because he tried to break Gothos out of the Deadhouse. Gothos is trapped there, and Gothos wants to stay trapped there, but Icarium tried to free him, and for that reason was somehow cursed with this Hulk situation.
Okay.
And
So why can't they tell him?
again, I think it's simply a matter of they're concerned he will either Hulk out or kill himself,
Okay.
and they don't want to do either for some reason.
Okay, so that thing then is not like something innate about Icarium, it's something because he was cursed when he tried to free. Okay. Fair enough. I think I was missing a couple of logical steps in there to put it all together.
Yeah. So there is a legend, right, for Icarium, and I think at least some of it is about the destruction, like the laying waste of several cities and possibly genocide, which I'm now starting to believe it wasn't intentional genocide, more the destruction of a people due to destruction and anger. But I don't know. I don't know his entire history. But um, yes, to your question, I do think he has committed crimes in the past, just not the one that Mapo thinks he did,
Okay.
which makes their friendship so much more tragic than we already thought it was.
Okay. But now that he knows, maybe he still doesn't tell him and he keeps it because he doesn't know what's going to happen.
About the fact that he's been destroying people?
Well, about the fact that, well, because the Elder once told Mappo to care about Icarium because, oh, look what he did to this village, right? So, but in theory, now that he knows the truth, he would be able to, like, okay, well, now I know, let's change things. Let's help Icarium remember, like, really remember.
I think he had made that decision before. Not that he would help him remember, more that he would do whatever Icarium needs to feel good about himself.
Yeah, Mappo stops Icarium from learning and doesn't tell him because he's seen now that once Icarium learns, Icarium becomes suicidal. If you remember, Icarium was basically like, just feed me to the Azath house.
Yeah.
I don't deserve to live. I'm too dangerous. I should just live in eternal torment, trapped here. We now know, like his father. And so Mappo, who loves Icarium, who does not want Icarium to suffer eternal damnation, refuses to tell him. Because Icarium does have a heart, right? Like, he feels bad. He's cursed, I mean, it's a tragedy that he's cursed to do things he doesn't want to do to the most extreme amount imaginable.
Yeah, makes sense.
Shannon, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. Yeah, so I think he's not going to go give him all his memories. But I don't remember if he talked about that time when he says, I think it was in these chapters actually, when he tells Icarium that that the city was leveled because you did it. You were the one. You built this clock and you leveled the city, right? Was it before or after he decides that he needs to go to the Azath house and sort of give himself up?
That was before.
Okay, it was
Must be
before.
right?
Okay. Yeah. So I think he's not going to give him information willingly, but he's not going to stop him anymore either, I think. And but actually, I think you brought up an interesting point. I'm not sure about what Mapo knows about his own village. See you, Jared. And is it that I know Fiddler realized that he was lied to, but does Mapo know?
I thought he did. I thought he was thinking like, now I know.
No, he knows.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
He did.
Okay.
He definitely had that revelation. Mappo has a character arc in this book. He does change, even though his relationship with Icarium has not in its patterns, its day-to-day patterns. Mappo has fundamentally changed.
Okay,
Fair
that
enough.
makes sense. I wasn't sure. I might have missed that. I don't remember when or how he has the realization about it. So
I don't remember exactly how, but yeah. Well, that's fine. We're never going to see these characters again anyways. So.
right.
We don't need to worry about thinking too much.
Characters we'll never see again.
We're done with them.
Fiddler and Absalar and Iskarl Pust and Crocus.
Speaking of Iskarl Pust, what about that scene where he actually sounds normal for once and then finds a wife for himself?
You're getting ahead of yourself. First, they're in the Deadhouse. They're trying to get to the Deadhouse. They're trying to figure out that you can use the Azath houses essentially to go from one Azath house to another one, because there's like a giant map across the ground and you can just like pick your location and drop through. And Iskarl Pust seemingly drops through a hole that goes on forever and they think they've lost him. And it turns out it's just an illusion. and that Iskarl is basically trying to sneak away from them to return to his temple. Where there, he returns to the temple and meets the spiders that have been bothering him all this time. It turns out they are, in fact, a person, Megora, and she wants to marry him.
Because that was apparently a mating ritual, him killing all those little spiders.
They're my ultimate pairing in this series.
Hmm.
I strip them so hard. I love them.
We did not have a clue though that she was with spiders before, right? I was trying to
No.
think, because when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. But before, I was like, where is she? I thought maybe I confused her with someone else, but okay, there was no clue.
She had not been introduced. All we knew was that there had been spiders that he had been killing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I
he was
remember that.
finding and killing every spider, and supposedly he knew that she was a diverse. But I guess we could have maybe guessed, because any creature you see in this book could be soul taken or diverse, right? There was a divers made out of blood flies on their way to the Deadhouse. Fiddler and company, when they make their way to the Azad house in the desert. But I had a question, and we were talking about how maybe the butterflies could be diverse too, but probably not. But maybe. But in the beginning, they weren't blood flies, right? But they were some kind of flies. In the prologue, and they formed a person and they talked, and Felicin was wondering how the hell they talked. Do you think that was diverse too? Or is that something else?
Shit.
A good point, actually.
That's a really great theory. That would explain why the guy totally disappeared.
Yeah.
Because he was divers.
Yeah, because divers can transform back into humans, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Right. And he's a priest. He's a priest of Hood, and one of Hood's symbols are like the flies, right?
Hmm.
So it's not just an omen of Hood. He probably is literally divers. I hadn't even thought about that. Great point, Varsha. No, I think you're spot on. I think he's a fly divers.
Interesting. And I guess the other question I had about the prologue that we could probably discuss now, I don't know if we have the answer to it yet, was the secret that they think Heberic knows, or they imply that Heberic has some information or will find something out soon. We don't yet know what that is, right?
I'm trying to
Don't
remember
remember.
what we're talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah, there was something that he tells Heberic that I was trying to map to something I knew or remembered from the 10 books, and I couldn't. But I still have no information. I think I'm going to have to reread that prologue again and see what other information there is. Because
There
there is
might
some.
be, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm wondering if it's like in the next book, right in the next book, because there is a bunch of stuff about Veneri in the next book, I think. Some stuff,
Mm,
right? So it could be.
I
I
think that
definitely did
might be the
confuse some
4th
stuff.
book. Yeah,
Maybe is it the fourth book?
I
thought it
think
was the
so.
next. Maybe.
I mean,
Okay.
we don't follow Heberic again properly until the 4th book. I don't remember if we see him at all in the 3rd. But
Okay.
that seems like a good sort of segue into the topic that you had, Dan.
Wait, so it's the fourth book, really? That we get in that Felicin again?
Yeah,
That's correct.
I
that's
thought it was the
definitely
next book.
Nope.
Okay.
the next book. We go back to the bridge burners.
Yeah, I
or
remember
bridge deck.
that.
Yes.
Okay. I just remembered there's this whole long arc about Felicin and the people in the vortex, the oasis, and stuff like that.
Mm.
And when reading this book, I was like, oh, it's all in this book. But it's not actually.
Yeah. No, it's in the 4th book.
I think the secret is that Finner hadn't left him at all, and that Finner was connected with him the entire time. That despite the fact he's a disgraced priest, he's actually a favored priest. And it was the other priests around him getting things wrong by cutting off his hand, and that Finner was never going to let him be without hands, never let him be without power, that they are intimately connected.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. And so intimately connected that they were able to yank the god out from
Right.
from where he was using his hands. Um okay. Yes, that is all in the fourth book, Dan. And I think we were talking earlier, I don't remember if you were there for that discussion, but about how a lot of stuff when I read it the first time, especially, their fiddler and Icarium and all of their run to the Deadhouse Gates, to the Azath house, all of that felt like, to me, if you had asked me before we reread this, I would have said last two chapters. But it was
Yeah.
like way before, maybe like 6-7 chapters before the end of the book even. So I feel like that always happens, even like when I'm rewatching TV shows. I'm like, I thought this didn't happen until the third season. So that's just a thing that generally happens to me on rewatches or rereads. But it's interesting that you thought that the fourth book stuff happened
I
in
feel
the
like this
second book.
happens to me more in these books.
Hmm.
Maybe because there's so many little different, like, not scenarios, but storylines, I guess. And they're not, I don't want to say they're not super connected, because they are connected. But they're also not connected. They're both very connected and also somewhat not connected. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. It's like one thread that you can follow, right? Like I think 1, 3, and 9 are sort of sequential. 2, 4, 6, and then 9 and 10, I suppose, are one
I
thing.
would say 1, 3, and 8 in a way, or even 1 and
Oh,
8.
sorry, 8. I don't know why I keep thinking Toll the Hounds is 9. It's 8. Yeah, I meant Toll the
Yeah.
Hounds.
Okay.
Yeah. And then 5 is its own thing. It's a side quest. But that connects to things. But
Well, no, it's crucial because 5 lays the
that's true.
groundwork for
Well,
6
5 in
and
Reaper's
7.
Gale.
5 and Reaper's Gale. Yeah, 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The
I
structure
was
of this.
also thinking, I don't know, even in this book, like the story of Mappo and Icarium and those guys, it's kind of separate from it, like from the story of Coltrane, and it's also kind of separate from the story of Felsen. Like they are connected because they are events that happen between and they sort of affect each other, but they're also quite compartmentalized, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I group all that storyline together, and then I forget that it's actually separated into different books that I didn't realize. Yeah.
I think I don't know how to do this very well, but I've heard Erikson talk about how he organizes chapters by theme, and like he's exploring a particular theme in each chapter, or even in a book. Like we talked about the thematic parallels between all the storylines several times over the course of these discussions. So I think the connections are very abstract. Like they do all, I guess, come together, but even within each book, I guess sometimes the connections are abstract. They're there, but they're hard to find. At least for me.
That makes sense.
So, do we want to talk about the last leg of this journey, Kalam?
Yes.
So we open up with him. We skipped him. He's actually how we open up chapter 21. Just kicking ass. I mean, he just goes like full anime character, like just tearing through all the grunts, and it's pretty badass. It's not my favorite thing because I just don't care that much about like long sequences of people just murdering other people, but it's cool. He's cool, and then we get to what I do love, which is his confrontation with Lysine. So we talked about this a lot in our full series spoiler chat the other day. So I want to open this up to you, Dan, about your thoughts about that scene.
Yeah. Well, one thing, so I get what's happening. Like Lysine explains to him the whole like it's not double crossing. It's the whole pretending to betray, right? And then what's his name? The high mage. What's his name?
Tashrin.
Tashrin? Okay, Tashrin. Yeah. So I guess he's going kind of like a bit too hard on things. But it's not like Lassine's order to do exactly everything that he does, right? So I get all of that. And then what I wasn't sure, I guess, maybe is why didn't Dushek tell the bridge burners about this plan? Because he kind of just sort of tells them like, "Oh, do your own thing," right? Because he does talk with them, doesn't he?
I
Sort
think
of.
he's giving them a chance to leave if they want to leave. And then, that story continues in book 3. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, but if he knows that Lassine doesn't want to kill all the bridge burners, why does he tell them, "Oh, you can leave"? You know what I mean?
But does he know that she didn't want to kill the bridge burners? So I think the
Yes.
outlaw thing was deliberate. They were in on it. But this bit was her chasing Sorry, right? She knew that there was a possessed person
Yes.
in this group. And I guess she sent Tishrin. But I don't think anybody else was in on it.
Oh, you think maybe Duchik doesn't know that part of the plan?
I
Yeah,
think
that
so.
part I
Yeah.
agree. I think is compartmentalized. But no, I mean, I think the reason Dujic doesn't tell them that he is collaborating with Lassine is because he knows they're about to face an almost suicidal battle. I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't fully gotten to explore it. I think this will become more clear as we read book 3. I know you've read it, but
Yeah.
the enemy they're facing is like an apocalyptic threat. It is extreme. So if they want to get out, now is a good time to get out, and it's
I guess.
better
But
to
what
not have
about
them feel like they're still doing military orders,
But what about the rest of his soldiers? He didn't tell them to. Did he tell them they could leave? I can't remember. I don't think he did.
Okay, so here's my understanding of that situation. He thought that Lassine did want to kill the bridge burners, and
Okay.
so he
Yeah.
was giving them an out. And only the bridge burners are interesting because they have legendary status in the army.
Mhm.
And so he was giving them an out to leave so that Lassine doesn't make further attempts to destroy them. I don't know how much of this has to do with the possibility of future battle. And I think the bridge burners would probably not bow out of that, as far as I know. Like, the dangers of the situation wouldn't daunt them, I don't think. But being destroyed by your own empress, maybe a little bit. Like, take the option to leave if you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he kept up the charade, was specifically because he kind of wanted to give them a chance to get out. Because they weren't going to be scared off by, this threat we're going to face may get us all killed. But if you say, well, the empress we're serving may hunt you to the ends of the earth, then that's a pretty good reason to get out.
Yeah.
And so that's why, kind of does. And it's interesting, circling back to actually Fiddler, and that Fiddler decides to re-enlist at the end of this all, that he's not going to go on with the 2 teenagers. He's not going to retire. He's not going to live a quiet life. He feels like he's not going to go back to the bridge burners or what's left of them. He's just going to join the revenge campaign. Tavor's revenge campaign is what he decides to do.
Yeah.
So did you catch that Tashrin did not actually intentionally obliterate the bridge burners and all the people and Countersail's boyfriend? That was all an accident because Nightchill attacked him.
Yeah. I got that. It's which is interesting because of how the first book is really portraying that as you're never thinking that's not what actually happened.
Right.
Right?
Everyone's pretty convinced. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess because we did sort of see it, it is narrated, so you're like, okay, well, I saw it happen, so it must be true.
Right.
Right?
Well, what we saw isn't untrue. It did the sorcery did bounce off him and obliterate things, but it wasn't because he was directly targeting shooting people. He was just trying to survive, and the conflagration was so intense and chaotic that it led to mass destruction.
But it's sort of we saw the description, and then we saw someone explain it, and our mind filled in all the gaps, and then we're
Right.
like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's what happened. Right.
Right. There's a lot of that in these books, definitely, where like you see something, it seems pretty straightforward, and then it turns out you are completely wrong. And actually, there's a lot more going on. I do think too, I don't want to comment on the scene too much, but I do appreciate that she is, after we've seen her just seem like incompetent and evil,
Mhm.
that we at least see that there are layers of depth to her, and like her
Yeah.
motivations are understandable. Doesn't necessarily excuse her actions, and it's still up in the air about just how good she is at her job, but she's not like completely callous and cold-hearted. Like she does care for some people, and she's intelligent enough too, right, to pull this whole fake out scheme on Kalam, which I love the reveal there that she was never there the entire time, and it was
Yeah.
all just a corpse that she had possessed to talk to him.
Yeah. I mean, it always felt like slander. I don't, I'm sure she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
thought that scene was hilarious that she turns out to be a bag of bones. There's so many layers of funny in that, like not haha laugh out loud, but just amusing funny that
Yeah.
Kalam backs out of that because it seems on the surface that he's just he's been so well convinced by her that that he doesn't want to follow through with what he wanted to do. Like, she did such a great job convincing him. Oh, but turns out she's actually a bag of bones. She's not actually there, and he just can't be bothered to go um find her again. Like, he's lost the motivation that he needs to go on that journey again. And and the fact that she, like, I guess the introduction to that scene, like making her seem so powerful, she's hiding in shadows and so on and so forth, and then bones. He was talking to bones.
I love too just the detail of that. She uses shadow magic, which
Yes,
is the
actually.
magic of the former emperor, the now god of
Mm.
shadows. Shadow Throne and Dancer, right? Like, that's their realm, and she's using that magic. It's just, there's the delicious irony there.
I agree. Yes, that is great. And what do you make of the fact that she wants Kalam to live? She tells Topper to call people off. And he's like, nope, I can't do that. But doesn't mean that he won't survive. And
I
we'll
think
use this to cull our weaker ones. Let's
Yeah, I think that she knows on some level. Like, I think she likes Kalam. I don't think she'd maybe go so far as to say that out loud. But beyond that, I think she's someone who recognizes a tool, a very good tool when she sees one. And Kalam is among their best, as evidenced by the fact that he massacred everyone who came for him.
all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
And Minala comes running to save him. I love the dramatic Hollywood moments in this book with their relationship.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so over the top.
Coming to save him in the last moments, and following him on a boat, like in the airport.
I'm actually kind of on board for it. I wish they would have
Yeah, I
gotten more
agree.
scenes together. Like, I wish they could have developed it a little more, but like, I'm on board.
I mean, I think we didn't see it on page, but they traveled together for long enough that I can buy
for
that
sure,
it
yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And they had good chemistry, and like, for me, what puts it over is that she leaves her family behind to relentlessly pursue this guy. Like, it's just like such a like Jane Austen sort of thing, like classic romance. Like, she's going to the ends of the earth. It's normally something that a man does for a woman, and so it's cool to see a woman doing it for a man. I'm on board.
Yes. Yes, I like this. I like the last minute save, and there may be categories of criticism we could level at this, that it's not realistic and whatnot, but damn it, give me the Hollywood moments sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. What else? The final epilogue with Coltane's soul coming back to, oh man, a pregnant woman who's about to, I guess, destroy the fetus because it doesn't have a soul. But nope, it was just waiting for Coldane's
In the
many-crowed
vessel.
soul to show
Yep.
up.
And so we see the rebirth
Interesting.
of a god.
Yes.
Or I should say, he's only an ascendant at this point, but all it takes for a god is worshippers. So we'll see.
Yes. There's okay, I had a question. Sorry.
Please.
At some point, I think we were told that maybe it was when Sormo Ina's soul was getting consumed by the butterflies. That it wasn't just the soul of one warlock, but many in that body. Is that true? Like, I didn't realize that until we were told that, and that was interesting to me. And if they're being eaten by butterflies as opposed to being reborn through crows, means that they won't be reborn. That feels like such a big loss for the world. But also, the other piece of interesting lore that we get is that the souls ride other souls, right? Like even the warlocks. The child that is born would have already had a soul, and the warlock is sort of the second soul riding that child. But in the case of Coltate, I guess the soul just needed all that space or something. But that was interesting. I don't know what that pans out, like what the consequences of that are, but it's just interesting that, he needed a special condition for
Yeah.
rebirth.
It's kind of like, we saw with Tattersail, and who was reborn as Silver Fox. There are just all these like soulless babies hanging out there,
Yep.
or something, like just waiting for some higher level being to come in and, fill them up.
Yeah. I guess they just have a few of those sent out every, which I guess, and I'd like to know how much of this plays a role, but what's the word I'm looking for? There is this sort of predestination aspect to it, right? Like this baby was conceived several months before Coltane died. So they knew that this was coming, or was it a preparation for the possibility of it? And if it didn't happen, what would have happened to the child? But I don't really care about that much. What I'm curious about is, was it certain that this would have happened? Is there some aspect of determinism to this world then in that case?
That's an interesting question. I mean, we know people can see the future, so there has to be some aspect of like there is a correct in quotes, like timeline. I don't know. At the same time, this definitely seems like a series that is pretty big about like free will and the ability to change and grow and make decisions. And
Yeah.
but I don't know that those have to be contradictory.
Yeah. Maybe there are some things that are just sort of destined to happen, but because even the deck of dragons, which they don't tell the future, it's more just what players are involved right now, right? It's not really making predictions, or no, I guess some of it does. There was that
Some of it definitely does.
yeah. There are some things that we know happen later that were predictions, but again, are they predictions of possibilities, or are they laying out realities? Like, we know that they were actually predicting the future because we know what plays out, but again, were they just predicting things that could happen? Yeah.
I mean, I think that there is some level of truthful foretelling because, like, oh my God, what is her name? I want to call her Esmenet Fellison. Fellison.
Wrong series.
Yeah, wrong series. Fellison has those dreams of blood, and like other characters have these portentous dreams
Right.
of things that
Yeah.
come true, and often they're kind of metaphorical, but like when you understand the metaphor, it's clear that like they're seeing something, an omen of something that is coming, that will happen. And so I do feel like there is some element of like fact to foretelling, but it's just not always immediately clear what that fact is.
Hmm. There is an argument to be made that we are connecting to somewhat unrelated things and making, like, sometimes you wake up with a bad feeling and then you get some bad news and you're like, oh, I had a bad feeling about this. But like, if nothing happens, you have a normal day, you don't really remember that too much. So this could also be interpreted as one of those, right? Like she's been through shit. She's dreaming about blood. She just wants blood. But and then she became the sort of cheerleader of the apocalypse, and suddenly her dreams have meaning, which, for the book, that makes perfect sense. But you could also argue the other way around, if that makes sense. Like, I guess my
Yeah.
point is, yeah, even the aspects of foreshadowing or predictions that we get, we could interpret them as not really being that, so they don't necessarily lay out a deterministic world, right? But
I will
yeah.
say, to kind of talk about this, I feel like there's stuff in later books that also complicate this. So this is tough to explore. Certain characters that I'm not going to give any explanations, but Erastus and things in that regard that definitely seem to imply that there is a malleability to the way events happen, or at least an apparent malleability. It's tough to say exactly how determined anything is or not. Certainly, the characters seem to experience it seems free flowing. That they are able to make decisions in those dimensions. Decisions have meaning in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Shannon, what are your thoughts about this?
I think, talking about free will versus predestination, it doesn't have to be either or. I mean, the people could have free will, but they're all going to a certain place through that free will. And so perhaps, once you get elevated to that higher level of godhood or whatever, you can see that. But I don't know.
A fourth dimension where they can actually see the flow of time. But we
We're
talked
really
about
getting
this so much when we read the other series. Yes. Cool.
Anything else? Anyone have any? Shannon, do you have anything?
Not really.
Well, we did it, folks. That's book 2 in the bag. I'm sad we don't have Steve with us. I'm curious about his thoughts at the end of this book. I know he really likes this book, so I know that much.
We'll drill him through the beginning of the next discussion.
For sure.
Yes.
Next book is pretty cool, though, if I remember correctly. So.
Oh yeah,
I
love Memories of Ice.
It's
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Isn't there? Is that's where we get the other really fun characters? This sort of like Iskal Past. There's another couple of characters, right, in the next one, which are okay.
Which actually will lead into our first spin-off.
I think I know who you mean.
The first spin-offs, the short stories, or like little
novellas.
Was it?
That's the first one?
Okay.
Comes after Memories of Ice.
And Corporal Brooch.
Yeah, I think we'll be reading that after Memories of Ice. We'll read the first novella after that, because publication order, I think that's next.
I think we should take a week to do that. Excellent. I bought it. I'm ready. I'm eager. I haven't read any of them, so I'm excited.
Me neither. Yeah. Okay, so
when
go ahead.
I was just going to ask. So, have we decided when the next when we start Memories of Ice? Do we start this week or next week?
That's a good question.
I was thinking we'd take a break and start the week after, but we could Yeah, we'll decide after.
So first Tuesday of May, tentatively.
Thereabouts.
Okay.
So for the audience, that's
6th of May would
roughly
be
6th of
tentatively
May.
the next meeting.
Yeah.
There we go. 6th of May.
6th of May. So, and I usually post these on Fridays. I think Steve also posts them on Fridays. So wherever you're listening to them, what is 3 days from 6th? The 9th is when
9th.
the first Memories of Ice discussion will go up. Actually, that's true. Because next week we'll post the spoiler discussion. So 3 episodes from now.
Maybe we'll have an Erikson interview sometime between now and then.
Yeah, if that scheduling works out, we'll probably push out Memories of Ice the week after.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. If our name changes to The Unwitnessed between now and then, you'll know why.
Burned yet again.
So I think that's all the bookkeeping stuff. Once again, if you'd like to chat with us about these books, please check out the pagechewing forum. And thank you so much for listening. Bye.